looking for healthier, fuller hair? Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers87.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. It feels alright when they come and say to you,
Well, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is another worst ever 11, and it is my worst ever 11. And I'm going to hand over the reins to George, who's going to present the show. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, an honour to do it, Steve, I've got to say. I know when you suggested this, it wasn't universally popular that we'd look at worst 11. And having done it and having done all the other things, the sad thing is, for me, it was nearly easier to find the worst 11 than the best 11, which was a bit of a shock, really, but a bit of fun, a great fun, and made you think about. Well, I know you'll tell us soon. Make you think about the depth of your knowledge of Newcastle United and the pains it puts you through, and some of the pains these people have put you through. So. Let's have a goalkeeper, Steve. Let's start off with a goalkeeper.
Okay, you've mentioned it. It is just for funness. You know, we're not having a dig at players, but we have had some absolute stinkers. And goalkeepers is probably, as I think I've discovered while I've been asking the lads on here, you know, including yourself, for your teams, the goalkeeper position is one which it probably proved to be a bit more difficult because we've had some really good goalkeepers. But in my time, the one goalkeeper that stood out as the worst is this guy, Dave Besson. And I'll tell you why, George. It's because he came from Wimbledon, who just won the FA Cup, of course, to knock Newcastle United out in the 5th round. I was there that game. They went on to win the cup final, the Crazy Gang. Crazy Gang beating the Culture Club, as John Motson affectionately said, and it was a 1-0 win for them. And of course, Dave Besson saved a penalty. John Aldridge stepped up to take the penalty at Wembley, and Besson saved it, guessed the right way and saved it. So he came with such a great reputation, and it was Willie McFall's roll of the dice. He rolled the dice and he went out and signed Dave Besson, who was a colossus of a man. It has to be said, 6'4", big lump of a guy. And along with him, he signed Andy Thorne, who came in as well from Wimbledon. He signed another guy called Glyn Hodges, who was only at the club for about 85 days. He also signed the smallest strike force I've ever seen at Newcastle, John Robertson and John Hendry, alongside Mirandina, who, you know, if you put them all together, were only 6 foot.
Yeah.
But Dave Besson, sorry, and his wisdom as a goalkeeper in the games that he played, and he played 20 games for Newcastle that season, in that 88-89 season. He basically got the ball in his hands and booted it over the top of the midfield to the front line of people who couldn't control a ball with their head, couldn't head a ball. And that was the reason we didn't score goals that season. To make it even worse as a goalkeeper, the whole point of being a goalkeeper is to keep goal, is to stop goals going in. And for a 6'4" man, all I ever saw of Dave Besson was, and it haunts me to this day that season, was him being lobbed. If you watch the video, which is now subsequently being put onto DVD, I hope to God nobody puts it onto Blu-ray. But if you watch it, I have watched that time and time again. And I'll tell you why I've watched it, to remind myself things aren't as bad as this. Because that season was awful. I when I was going through my team and I'm looking and thinking, how many games did Besson actually play? So Gary Kelly, I think, took over from Besson, who was the polar opposite of Besson. You know, he was such a small guy for a goalkeeper, but he was so much better. And I still believe we may well have stayed up by the skin of our teeth that season had Gary Kelly gone in earlier. But Dave Besson, they spent a lot of money on him and he let us down. And, you know, I'm sure he didn't do it deliberately, but it was just a catalogue of disasters at Newcastle. And a month, he came to Newcastle after the 88 Cup final, and he came to us for £850,000 in 1988.
Which was a lot of money in those days, yeah.
Yeah, mate, unbelievable.
The irony is that after his exploits in the Cup final and in Wimbledon's team that year, he was actually being talked about as an England goalkeeper. You know,
yeah, you're right. And you know, he left Newcastle, and when he went to Chelsea, he was there from 1989 to 1993, and he made 133 appearances at Chelsea. Yeah. I mean, he actually became the #1 goalkeeper. He replaced Roger Freestone there. Yeah. And I mean, again, you know, from his position to go from Newcastle, where it was an absolute nightmare for him, he went on to have a half decent career, because he then went from there, and he went to places such as Southampton. Did quite well there, 88 appearances. Went to Nottingham Forest. 97 to 2001, 128 appearances there. Hung up his gloves at Stevenage in 2015 after playing 774 games. And I guess, you know, he's going to be quite happy about that. You know, he can look back and see he had a good career. But at Newcastle, I bet you in Newcastle, he probably wishes he didn't move. And maybe it was something to do with he didn't settle in. Who knows? But for obvious reasons, he is my goalkeeper.
Right. Good start. Now you're going to go for a back three, I understand. Yeah. So let's have your right-sided defender.
Okay. It's like a lot of the lads. It's difficult because, you know, you're trying to find players that you didn't like, or weren't very good. I'll start with my left side, if you don't mind, and that's because it's somebody who, again, had an esteemed career elsewhere. If I say that he played at Crystal Palace between 75 and 80 and had 172 games, faultless performances, 3 goals. Then he went to Arsenal, 1980 to 88, 8 years at Arsenal, 314 appearances and 6 goals there. He then came to Newcastle, and I just don't know what was wrong with him. 20 appearances he had, similar to the goalkeeper that I picked, and no goals. And again, same season, 1988 to 1989. The left side is Kenny Samson. Awful, awful, awful. To see somebody who was such a good player play so badly at Newcastle. And, you know, I could have probably named the entire 11 from that season, but I haven't. But it was just, it's ingrained in me that season. It was my first relegation. But again, Newcastle spent £300,000 on this player again in 1988. And, you know, just awful. You know, as Arsenal were winning the old First Division in 88-89, you know, Kenny Samson was taking Newcastle to the bottom of the First Division. And it's just a head scratcher. Nobody really knows why. You know, I know back in those days, you know, things were different. People socialized. Was he one of those people? We know he's had battles since, but was he one of those people who came to Newcastle and maybe saw the lights of the big market and, you know, spent more time having a good time than he did?
Well, his history suggests he did like the socialize, that's for sure.
Yeah. So maybe
that was the start of it, you know.
Was it that, or was it the fact that, you know, Willie McFall and, you know, the subsequent boardroom wranglings that were going on behind the scenes, you know, the discontent behind the scenes? Was it that was affecting just the whole team in general? I don't really know, but for me, again, just a huge name really that came to Newcastle that you thought, this guy is going to be a massive asset to us. This guy is going to be somebody who can really, you know, put us in the put us in the, you know, at the top of the top of the league, and we're going to do really well. But sadly, you know, Kenny Samson just wasn't the man to take us on that journey, and didn't do well for us at all. And big shout out to Danny Brannigan, who I knew quite well, who took that photograph. Not many photographs, it has to be said, of Kenny playing for Newcastle. All the players who I've actually picked in my team, it has to be said. So we will see. But yeah, that is the first person in my back three.
Centre back now.
Next player in my back three is somebody who really didn't set the world alight with a part of his name, Roberto D Silva. I was expecting great things from him. But Claudio Roberto D Silva, affectionately known as Claudio Cassapa. I can think of things rhyme with Cassapa, which would probably sum up how this guy played at Newcastle. It's the particular make of a toilet. He signed on a free transfer because his previous contract with Leon had expired on the 3rd of August in 2007. He signed a 2-year deal with an option for a third. He made his debut for Newcastle as an 89th minute substitute during the goalless draw against Aston Villa in August. And he broke a record that day, George. Do you know what the record was?
No.
He became the 1,000th player to represent Newcastle United in a competitive match.
Wow.
What a player to have that. Unlike some of the other people in my team, he did score a goal in his 2 years at Newcastle and in his 25 appearances. He scored with a header against Tottenham in October in a 3-1 win. But I guess he's probably better known for what happened on the 3rd of November. And he was substituted in a game against Portsmouth after 18 minutes.
Yeah.
18 minutes.
18 minutes, yeah.
Crazy. And it was, you know, people, I remember him coming off, and I remember the altercation, and there was a bit of to and fro, and you know, it was because he was poor. He was terrible. He was misplacing passes. He was awful. The word that came out from the club after that, clearly a propaganda exercise, was it was due to a slight hamstring strain. He never played again until the 15th of December, and believe it or not, I wasn't at this game, but he got man of the match in an away win at Fulham. He did score another goal for Newcastle in the Cup. The FA Cup was the 4th round match against Stoke City. We won 4-1. But that was probably one of the last times we really saw him competitively, because he was then out for a sustained period with a groin injury. And the following season, we did have a smaller squad. He was used sparingly, I would say, as a defender and a midfielder that season. But again, 2008, 2009, blighted by injury. And he made his last appearance in December. We never saw him in the run-up to the relegation that year. And he was released when his contract expired in 2009. Just not good enough. And the games that I remember him playing, he was absolutely awful. And just one of those.
Irony, what you started with was true. Because of where he came from, because of his name, people were imagining would sign a huge star.
Well, this is it. And this is what you think when you see these players, with a name like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably up there with Fumaker as one of these people who came with such a reputation, and you think this guy's going to be fantastic, but awful. So there we go. Kasapa is in me back 3, and I've got one more to go.
Right-sided.
So I put this guy in because basically there was so little information on him, but I do remember him signing. Ronnie Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
And he's probably in the category of people who you forget actually played for the club.
Yes.
Basically because he didn't really play. He came to Newcastle from Manchester United. How many times have we heard that before? Alex Ferguson didn't give good players away. Newcastle never learned a lesson from that. Over the years, we always took rubbish players past their sell-by date, and we gave them a chance at Newcastle. And it's as obvious as the nose on your face now, but looking back, we were all going, oh, well, he could be okay, he might do all right here, but we just got a load of duffers from them. He played 3 games at Newcastle in 2004, 2005. And ultimately, it was a fitness situation. And for me, it's unforgivable for a player to come to a football club and not be fit. If you are a professional footballer and you are leaving a club after, he was at Manchester United 6 years, played 99 games, scored 7 goals. Then he went to Aston Villa, and I think we got, apologies, I think we got him from Aston Villa, but, it still shows that Ferguson gave away a player to Villa, and we then took him on. It's even worse. He's gone to another club. But we got him from Villa, and it was 3 appearances, and he was unfit. And he went from us to Vålerenga and went on to play 59 games, score 6 goals. So I just don't know what it was. I'm not sure whether it was the fact that he came to Newcastle and just, didn't fancy the move. So maybe he didn't put the effort in, or he just, again, it's just a strange one. How a professional footballer can't be fit, George.
Yeah. You're right. That's the unforgivable sin, is that you come to do your trade for something which demands your fitness, and can't even do that. That if you can't even get on the pitch because you're not fit, what a damning say about your professionalism and all that sort of thing. So and the Manchester United thing. I mean, you might recall even in my 11 that I had a Busby babe. But we got the Busby babe that was bloody awful. So
Ronnie plays a part of my 3 at the back. I certainly think with that 3 and the goalkeeper, I certainly think we would leak some goals, George.
Certainly would. You can hear them rattling in the back of the net now.
So I've gone for
a 4 in the middle.
Yeah, I've gone for 4 in midfield. I guess my controversial addition to this might raise a few eyebrows, but he was a good rapper and he was a good footballer at other clubs. It's this guy, John Barnes. And you can see that there's a flavour of my team here. It's players who should have been better. Barnes obviously came in to Newcastle under Kenny Dalglish. Dalglish obviously is much maligned amongst our fan base because A, he followed Kevin Keegan. B, people see him as the person who dismantled the Entertainers team, and then signed players like jobs for the boys. That's I guess that's why a lot of people look back at Kenny Dalglish's reign and think he was no good. But
well, in my opinion, he wasn't fit either.
Well, he wasn't, no. And I mean, he could have gone to West Ham. West Ham and Harry Redknapp were chasing Barnes' signature, and he had agreed in principle to join them. And then at the last minute, Kenny Dalglish rang John Barnes, and he changed his mind. And of course, 1997, 1998, he came to Newcastle. Now, I don't know the timings, but I can't recall it. But I do. We all recall that was the season that Alan Shearer was injured. He got that injury at Everton in pre-season, and he was out for the rest of the season. So that meant that John Barnes was up front with John Dahl Tomlinson, who was a young player who'd come into the club who, missed a golden opportunity in his first game and never really recovered from that. Barnes came in, and when I was doing my research on this, I was surprised to see that Barnes actually finished top goal scorer that season with 6 goals. But that tells you the story. I mean, we had a lack of ability to score goals in the absence of Alan Shearer. Of course, we'd sold Les Ferdinand, who didn't want to go back on his promise to Tottenham. Peter Beardsley had gone as well, and we'd also signed another companion of John Barnes, Ian Rush, and Stuart Pearce was at the club as well. He'd been brought in. And I've read a lot of football biographies, and one of them was Stuart Pearce's biography, Psycho. And I picked it off my bookshelf this morning and just wanted to remind myself of what he said about John Barnes. And he felt that John Barnes, just as you said, was overweight by the time he joined Newcastle, and that both Barnes and Ian Rush had less desire than himself to win at that stage in their careers, as they had already won everything, and that they could have had more of an edge to them. So when your teammates coming out and saying that, it made me feel a lot better about picking John Barnes for this team.
You can imagine what it was like in the bloody dressing room. Good God.
Yeah, so John Barnes, I mean, he might have finished top scorer, but the previous season, Newcastle were Premier League runners-up. The season that John Barnes came in, we finished 13th. Bizarrely, I can't even remember him playing in the cup final. But we reached the 1998 FA Cup final, and he did go on to the final. Did go onto the field for the 4th FA Cup final of his career. So I can't even remember him being part of that, but he was. And he also played in the UEFA Champions League, which included the game against Barcelona. I would never have had him in that team. If I had to sit down and write the team, I knew the team was struggling that season, but I would never have had John Barnes in that team.
Me neither. It was the game I was at, and I couldn't remember him being on the team either.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Dalglish was sacked in the 1998-99 season, and then he ended up on the outset. Hullett came in, didn't like the older players, including Rob Lee, of course, Stuart Pearce. Barnes, out of all of them, thought he would have had a chance with Ruud Hullett because they had worked together on the 1998 World Cup ITV commentary, but clearly not friends. Barnes thought he was a lot fitter the following season, but he just didn't have a chance, and eventually left the club on a free transfer to Charlton Athletic, who'd just been promoted. But look, not as bad as some of the others statistically. 27 games, 6 goals, but simply because of the fact that he was such a big name in football, but he was such a
huge disappointment. Huge disappointment.
A big letdown, mate. A big letdown. So yeah, John Barnes makes it into my midfield. Next
And the next one.
in the midfield, George, is this guy, Pat Hurd.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Now, Pat Hurd, again, somebody who came to Newcastle at a time where there was probably a bit of unsettlement. When isn't there? I guess you say when isn't there something going wrong at Newcastle behind the scenes? Of course, Newcastle had been promoted. Kevin Keegan had flown off on a helicopter, but then Arthur Cox left, and it left us with Jack Charlton as our manager. Now, Jack, World Cup winner, Ashington lad, and somebody who played the game completely differently to Arthur Cox. And I think Pat Hurd came in with the remit of, do what I say, and Pat Hurd followed the instructions, but he was awful. Again, it was a season. It was my first full season as a fan watching the game, and he came into a team after, he hadn't had an illustrious career before. He'd been to Everton, played 11, Aston Villa, played 24 games. He'd been at our rivals in the promotion season, Sheffield Wednesday, and he played 25 games, scored 3 goals that season. So he came to Newcastle. Also, a European Cup medal holder as well. He played. He was named as a substitute in the 1982 European Cup final. But he came to Newcastle with high hopes, I guess, and I just don't think he'd settled. I just don't think he settled at Newcastle. He was Jack Charlton's first signing. He scored a goal in a 3-0 win over Ipswich, and he scored another goal in a 2-2 draw to Luton. But I just don't think he settled. And I just remember him being the first midfielder that I could remember misplacing passes and just not seeming to have the get up and go. And the big thing for me is the effort. I think we've said it for many years now. It's the effort that a player shows. And if you don't get the effort,
he couldn't control the ball for Toffee.
Yeah,
he didn't have the silky skills of any of our usual midfielders, because he struggled even to control the ball. Yeah,
that's it. And I think the words "couldn't trap a bag of cement" probably another player that this could probably apply to in our time. I mean, he didn't stay long. He was only here for a year. And clearly didn't suit him, didn't suit us. Went to our Teesside rivals. He went to Middlesbrough, went on loan there, and then went down there, and again didn't set the world alight. Played less games for them than he did for us. 34 for us, 25 for them. Found a home at Hull City. Was there for a couple of years. Played 80 games and scored 5 goals, and then his career petered out at Rotherham, Cardiff, Hull, and ended up in Brunei in 93, 94, 293 games, 26 goals. But again, just somebody who, for me, just didn't hit the heights at Newcastle, and was a poor choice for Jack Charlton's first signing, I felt, and Jack's career never got any better as a manager at Newcastle after that.
No, and that may be part of it, because as you said at the beginning, Jack signed him because he thought he could do a job his way. That's
it. That was it. The Jack Charlton way was to hoof the ball, pretty similar to what what Willie McFall did. Just get the ball and hoof it, miss the midfield out, and get have a big man up front chasing the ball, and getting the talented players to get the scraps. It just didn't work. Didn't work at all. So he's rightfully got a place in my team.
And next, what we're doing next?
All right, this man,
midfield? Yes,
still in the midfield. Yes, Derek Vivian Hamilton, affectionately known as Des, to his teammates. There he is in all his glory. Came to Newcastle. I wouldn't say after a blistering start to his career. Bradford City was where he made his name, 94 to 97, 88 games, 5 goals. He came to Newcastle in 1997, and he came to Newcastle for £2 million. Bearing in mind, we'd been playing in the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA Cup. He just couldn't play football. And he was Kenny Dalglish's first signing at Newcastle. And I can see, why fans were against him from the start when Keegan had signed Tino, Ginola,
Yes.
all of these big names, Philip Albert, Alan Shearer. And there's Kenny Dalglish's first major signing is Des Hamilton. And he fought off competition from Middlesbrough to get his signature. Get this though, when he arrived at the club, he was actually injured.
Yeah.
So he didn't play for weeks because his full debut was delayed because he damaged ankle ligaments in a pre-season friendly against Juventus. He made his debut in the League Cup in a 2-0 win over Hull City, and he actually scored the opening goal and then received a call-up for the England under-21 side against Portugal in May of that year, 1997. In November 1997, he made his European debut against FC Barcelona, which was the 1-0 defeat. But then after that, he just struggled to get in the side. Clearly hadn't impressed the fans, hadn't impressed Kenny Dalglish, manager. And he found himself, again, when Hull came in, surplus to requirements, alongside the likes of Rob Lee, which was a cardinal sin, as we all know. Alexandra Pistoni, he wasn't even given a squad number by Ruud Gullit.
No.
He went from Newcastle on loan to Sheffield United, then on loan to Huddersfield, then on loan to Norwich, then on loan to Tranmere, not once but twice. Newcastle finally got him off the books at the end of his contract, where he went to Cardiff City on a permanent deal, and that was a slight improvement for him. He played, at Newcastle, he only played 12 games and scored the 1 goal. We played Cardiff, he played 25 games, Grimsby 27. He ended up with Barnet, where he couldn't get a game, 2004. And then he went to Campion, 2005 to 2010, according to his stats. But there's no record of what he did there. So whatever happened to Des Hamilton is the question. The one thing I can tell you about him is that he's probably the star of the talking circuit, but not as a speaker. He's one of the players that all of the players have a story about.
Right.
And mainly because on that ill-fated trip to Dublin, where Alan Shearer and Keith Gillespie had that well-publicised dispute, it was him who ran in the bar to tell everybody that Alan Shearer had allegedly decked Keith Gillespie. So the setup was like the rhino in Jumanji running through the bar. So probably describes his running style. That's not me describing him like that. I hasten to add, it's what the players. Listen to one of the Steve Howie talk-ins on the channel. You'll get the picture. But another welcome addition to my team, and one which I'm sure would cost us a few tackles, cost us a few goals, and probably lead to this side getting well and truly hammered, George.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, in all the games I've seen, he's another one who played in games, and I can't even remember he was there. It was so nondescript, Yeah.
So I've got one more midfielder, George, and this guy, wow. Again, somebody who, shamed the black and white shirt when he played in it. For one moment, he had a moment of glory. If I tell you though that before he came to us, he was at Paris Saint-Germain and played 95 games and scored 10 goals. He was then on loan at Real Betis and scored 1 goal in 7 games, and then went on loan to Sochaux and played 18 games and scored one goal, you'll be able to see why Newcastle probably thought it was worth taking a gamble on him, because he had a decent enough start to his career. See, I mean, PSG, 95 games, 10 goals. But it's this guy.
Yeah.
Fabrice Pancrat.
Wow.
For giving me his full title, Fabrice Dimitri Panarin. 6'1" tall, described as an attacking midfielder, something which I didn't see at all at Newcastle. He signed in November 2009. He signed a contract with Newcastle to the end of the season with an option to extend. He was given the number 21 shirt in January 2010, and he was signed to be a fellow right winger for Wayne Routledge, who'd come from QPR on a long-term loan deal.
Yes.
And I don't know any Newcastle fans who enjoy watching this guy play. He made his debut against Swansea. We won 3-0. He flattered to deceive. He did score a goal, which we'll always remember. It's the only thing we'll remember him for. In December 2009, there was a great bit of skill from him. And he, for want of a better expression, he mullered the ball off the crossbar. And it was a great goal against Watford and a 2-0 win after coming on as a substitute. He came up with a couple of assists as well in games, but other than that, this guy really did not live up to the reputation that went before him.
He came close to my team as a substitute.
Did he? Yeah.
I was very, very near putting him in, yes.
Yeah. He didn't do much when he left either. He went to AEL in 2011, only played 8 games there. Ended up at Nantes, which was probably a good move for him, back to his native country in 2011 to 2014, 60 games and 10 goals there. That was his level, certainly. And I think it shows you that probably back in the early noughties that French league wasn't as good as it is, now. But yeah, a welcome addition again to my midfield. And who knows, he may get the odd consolation goal like he did, a bit like that goal he scored for Newcastle all those many years ago. So that's me midfield, George.
Brilliant. Best way to sum it up is as much ado about nothing, I'm afraid.
I think
lots
you're right.
Lots of disappointment. Yeah, and understand it. No problem. So we're now looking at 3 attackers, I gather.
We are, yes. And this guy hasn't featured in anyone's teams as yet. I'm sure he will, though. The haircut alone, and I'm not jealous of his haircut, but Andreas Andersen.
Yeah.
Oh my God, George. This was painful watching this guy. Really, really painful. Came from Milan, believe it or not. Sounds impressive. 13, but he only had 13 appearances and 1 goal there. Milan sussed him out. Why did Newcastle not suss him out before they actually, took him in and brought him to our football club? 27 games, 4 goals surprised me. I never thought he'd scored 4 goals at our club. I couldn't remember them. But he missed several months again when he got to the club. Not injured, thankfully, but he had glandular fever. And I've had glandular fever. It is a bit of a sickness, but it doesn't rule you out for months. And he struggled to regain his form after that. It's starting to sink in now. I was probably drunk, like most Newcastle fans, at the 1998 FA Cup final, because he played in it as well.
Yes.
So I must have blotted this out of my mind. I mean, let's put it frankly, nobody watches the cup finals after you've been beat. I've got the DVD, but yeah, he played in the 1998 FA Cup final, which we lost to Arsenal. That's it. Yeah. That's all I can say about him. But he was awful. He was terrible.
That's the infamous final when the drunks in the back of the car I was driving got me into trouble with the law. I remember the story where I was in the traffic.
Yeah.
The policeman pointed us into a garage because I was following the royal car. Our Neil said to me, "Do you see who's in front of that car in front of her?" And I said, "I said you can touch us again." And he no sooner got the words out of his mouth, and I was directed into a garage and surrounded by policemen with guns and all sorts.
Yeah,
that was the match. So, but I still don't remember him.
he was awful. And I just remember, I mean, we were doing the fanzine back in those days, and I remember, you know, putting them on the front of the fanzine. I'm pretty sure I had him, the cartoonist had him in a chair, and Tamuri Ketsbaya behind him and saying, "Do you not want one of these haircuts?" or something like that anyway. But it was, I mean, he was just awful. I put him up there. I've got to be honest, I put him up there with the likes of Frank Pingle, Rob McDonald.
Close for me as well.
Rob McDonald could have been in there. You know, I hasten that, even though he wasn't playing in his right position, John Robertson could have been in there. You know, John Robertson was awful in that 88-89 season. But I went for Andreas Andersen as one of my first three up front.
Yeah. Understandable, because, dreadful. I mean, as I say, he was competing with Pingle when I picked mine. So that says something about it.
Yeah, exactly. So
where you going next, right or left?
Okay, the next guy, I mentioned him earlier, and you know, this guy was such a striker. I mean, he was such a great striker in his time. You know, he was a bit of a trendsetter. I mean, Liverpool, he was great. He came out of nowhere, and he basically, you know, took the world by storm at Liverpool in those glory years for Liverpool. And, you know, he then went and did what lots of people wouldn't do in those days, which was give it a go abroad. Now, Gary Lineker was successful. Ian Rush wasn't as successful. Still not a bad strike rate. Went to Juventus, 29 games, 8 goals. I think he struggled a little bit with it. Came back to Liverpool on loan. Had another spell at Liverpool again. And then went to Leeds United. Didn't do so well at Leeds. So when he came to Newcastle, again, it was that old boys club kind of reunion. He came back in, as I mentioned earlier. He came back in to help an old pal, Kenny Dalglish, who of course was, who was managing Newcastle at the time, and who lost Alan Shearer with that injury. He struggled to get a game, Rushy. Shearer at Christmas, of course, came back from the long-term injury. So it limited Rushy to 10 games and 2 goals for us. The only consolation for him, for me, is the goal he scored in probably one of the worst games I've seen, but we won away from home. And that's making a big statement, because there's been lots of games like that where we've played badly and managed to get a win. But we played Everton in the FA Cup, and it was the winning goal at Stanley Park, at Goodison Park, sorry. And that was the year, of course, that we got through, to the first FA Cup final that we had in 24 years. Only other game he scored in against was another cup tie. It was against Hull City. So he never actually scored a league goal for us. But yeah, I mean, he was older, a lot older. I would have loved to have seen Ian Rush at Newcastle in his pomp, but that just wasn't meant to be. So he takes his place up front with Alexander Andersen,
which is sad with somebody that had the career he had. But from a personal point of view, he gets credit for kind of bringing our Neil into football. Because Neil's first game that I took him to, that he came with when he decided to come with me, was the cup tie against Chester, when an 18-year-old Ian Rush tore to pieces in that FA Cup tie. And Neil never forgot that. And the excitement of that, it literally switched Neil on. You talk to Neil about Ian Rush, and he'd tell you that's what switched him on, and he was determined to go back, and he's hardly missed a game since. But Ian Rush, but sad that somebody with that sort of career plummet to that level. And I think you're right to label it old boys thing. There was a Liverpool flavour about the dressing room then, which couldn't have been healthy for the other players.
No, definitely not. But yeah, as I say, it's what might have been had we had them 10 years earlier.
Yes.
So I've got one more player in the 11. I've got another guy to team up with Anderson and Rushy up front. This guy, again, when you hear the teams that he played for before he came to us, Saint Etienne, 73 appearances, 17 goals. Toulouse, 44 appearances, 10 goals. Monaco, 44 appearances, 14 goals. Doesn't sound a bad record, but he came to us in 2014. His name, Emmanuel Riviere. And, oh, dear me, he signed a 4-year contract. It was an undisclosed fee. It was supposedly in the region of £6 million that Alan Pardew had spent. He was the 5th signing of that 2014 transfer window. He talked a good game. He came to the club. He said, I'm very happy to be here at Newcastle. When the club spoke to me, I said yes immediately. It was an easy decision because Newcastle's a big club with great fans and a good stadium. I think somebody must have texted him that and said, read that out.
Doesn't that sound very like a press briefing for somebody?
So he made his debut in our opening game in August against Manchester United. It was a 2-0 defeat. He was substituted for Jose Perez. He did score. His first goal for the club came on in September. He scored 2 goals, including a penalty to help Newcastle beat Crystal Palace 3-2 in the 3rd round of the League Cup. He didn't score in the league, though, and this is why he's in my team, until the 16th of May.
Wow.
He was set up by goalkeeper Tim Krull to open the goal scoring at Queen's Park Rangers. We lost the game 2-1 to QPR, who had been relegated that season. And that's it. That's his only league goal for Newcastle. He was for £6 million. All I can say is Pardew was sold a duffer there. Whoever told him to go and sign him, I scratch my head when I see these kind of things. So he was there from 2014 to 2017. He only played 26 games and he scored 1 goal. And I mean, how many of those games were substitute appearances? I don't know.
And the other thing is, he's another one who, when he collected the ball, you didn't know where it was going to go. He'd trap it and it would go 20 yards in the opposite direction. Just no basic skill at all for me.
No, poor all round, and a big letdown for Newcastle fans again. Went on when he left the club finally in 2017. Went to Metz, 43 games, 7 goals. Cosenza, 31 games, 13 goals. Crotone, 21 games, 1 goal. 297 appearances, 63 in total in his career. Played for France under 16s, 17s, 18s, 19s, 21. Didn't make the national team. No surprise there. Then went to play for Martinique internationally. I didn't realise you could go and change your nationality and play for another team, but he did. And did okay. 5 games, 3 goals for them. But yeah, that's it. That is unfortunately.
I think it's a residential qualification, isn't it?
It must be, yeah, because he did go and play for 2 national teams. It's a good quiz question, if nothing else. So I've got 3 subs, George.
Right.
And boy, did I struggle with these, because I could have had a whole host.
Yes. Another team.
but you can. That's the thing, and especially when me doing other people's teams, and I'm at, obviously I know because I've already recorded a few who people have picked. I didn't let it affect my team. Although the manager was difficult. But the first player on the bench, I've gone for another goalkeeper. It's this guy, Mike Hooper.
Yes.
And look, I've met Mike, lovely lad. After his career, didn't want any publicity, just wanted to go off into the distance and forget about it. Last seen doing the doors in in Chester Street. He was doing the Red Lion pub in Chester Street, not there anymore, but he was there. Strange career, and I'm not sure whether was football just not his thing. I really don't know. Bristol City was where he started. made one appearance, 83 to 85, one appearance in 2 years. That was strange. Then he went to Wrexham in 85, 34 games. Then he was at Liverpool, which is where probably everybody remembers him. 1985 to 1993. Reserve keeper, of course. But, you know, when he was called upon, he played 51 times for Liverpool. He was signed by Kenny Dalglish for Liverpool. And he played in the 1986 FA Charity Shield as a substitute for Bruce Grobbelaar. He won 6 major trophies in his time at Liverpool.
Wow.
So in 51 appearances, 6 major trophies. Grobbelaar though kept him out of the.
It's a hell of a CV. It's a hell of a CV to take with you wherever you go.
So of course, when David James came to Liverpool, his first team chances were limited even more. He signed for Newcastle in September '93, and obviously Newcastle had just been promoted back to the Premier League, so Kevin Keegan was manager. He made his debut after he'd signed. 2 days later, he kept a clean sheet against West Ham, but he just couldn't get in the team. And you know, the games he played for Newcastle, he played 25 between 1993 and 1996. He didn't endear himself to Newcastle fans. Newcastle loaned him to Sunderland. I don't think that helped. He didn't play any games at Sunderland. He went away for that period of time. And his fate at Newcastle was sealed when, you might remember the moment, he was caught on camera openly laughing whilst on the bench after Newcastle conceded a goal. Newcastle then signed Shaka Hislop, and that was that. After Newcastle and Sunderland loan, nothing. He stopped. He just stopped playing football. And that, you know,
That is.
could have. It is, yeah. And I'm not sure whether it was that, you know, whether it was that revelation, you know, that, you know, cameras are everywhere, and I don't know. It's such a strange situation for somebody just to suddenly stop, you know.
It's an odd one, yeah.
But
I mean, I like you, we saw some of mine. They still had reasonable careers, but at a lower league. But to just disappear, that is unusual. That is unusual.
Yeah, and he clearly stayed in the area because, like I mentioned earlier on, he then basically started working on the doors in Newcastle. So in Chestnut Street, he became a doorman. So he must have needed the money. I find it really hard to believe. So what was the story behind that? We'll probably never know. But yes, no. He is my first substitute, George.
Not surprised. The next one, you're doing an attacker and a defender, or you just?
I went for a midfielder first of all.
Right.
I use that term very loosely for this guy, and it's Andy Faye.
Yes.
Andy Faye. Anyone remember him? Because he was absolutely US. His full name, Andy Mustafa Faye, and again, you know, had some games before he came to Newcastle. Monaco didn't play, but he was signed by Monaco. That's where he got his professional break. ES Frasers, never heard of them, but he played 71 games and 11 goals. Then he was at Auxerre, 79 games, 3 goals. Then he was at Portsmouth, where he played 41 games in 2003 to 2005, which is where Newcastle signed him from. And we signed him for £2 million. What a transfer window this was. He signed at the same time as Jean-Alain Boumsong and Celestine Babiaro as part of manager Graham Souness's first transfer deals at the club. Yes, Graham, you wonder why we don't like you as a manager at Newcastle. He made his debut in Newcastle's 3-1 FA Cup win over Coventry City in 2005, January 2005. His first league game came in a 1-1 draw with Man City away. Yes, we actually got a point in Man City. He played in the UEFA Cup for Newcastle against Heerenveen, and he made his first appearance of the 2005-2006 in Newcastle's 2-0 win over Dubnica, who we've talked about in UEFA Intertoto Cup. Those were the days episode. Not a great player. He was used on the right wing a lot of the time when Newcastle were suffering with injuries. He was used as a makeshift midfield come striker. I could give him the benefit of the doubt and say he wasn't at Newcastle at the greatest of times. But yeah, he was poor. He was just poor. He really failed to impress me and lots of Newcastle fans.
Yeah.
It was lack of effort. And he's up there with the likes of Damien Duff, who could have easily been in my team. For people who came for a payday, he didn't come to Newcastle with the oomph and the ambition to take us anywhere. And I guess the information I've given you makes you feel as if he was there a long time. He was only actually with us for a year, and he played 31 games, but it was 31 games too many, and it was 31 games enough for me to say this guy's awful. And for me, rightfully takes a spell on the bench. The fact that he was in a club for a year tells you, how poor he was. We managed to offload him to Charlton, and that was the last we saw of him. He went to Charlton. He had a spell at Rangers. Went to Stoke City, finished his career at Leeds United. Did play for Senegal, though. Senegal international. Played 34 times for his country, but didn't score a goal. But, Amdi Faye, another substitute for me.
Yeah. I wish I couldn't say it, but I do remember him well. For the wrong reason. For the wrong reason.
Poor, just a poor player in general. A poor player, somebody who came to Newcastle, I think, as I said, just for a payday. And I'll never understand, some of these transfers and why the club.
I was amazed he got the Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. So finally, George, my last sub today. I'll show you a picture of him. There's not actually a picture of him playing, George.
Oh, right.
Because he never actually played. But I remember him signing. And he was at the club. He was at the club for 3 years.
My God.
Fabio S Blera. He's got a great name. He's got a great name. But yeah, Fabio S Blera came to Newcastle in 2008. Which was just before the relegation season, of course. And he played a grand total of no games. So therefore, didn't score any goals. There's no surprise to hear. I mean, this guy, I will never understand, again, why Newcastle take, I know sometimes, you'll listen to a scout, you listen to an agent, and they'll say, "Oh, this guy's doing well. This guy, this guy's a one to watch." But yeah, he was an ex-Italian youth international. We signed him from Atalanta, and many people in Italy claimed that he was going to be the next great Azzurri striker. 6'2", and clearly just couldn't do it. He just was not a footballer. It's just a strange one. He was loaned to Sampdoria and Roma in Italy when he was in Newcastle, maybe hoping that he would discover some form, and Newcastle wouldn't have wasted that time. But he didn't get any further than representing the youth sides. And as I say, he was at Newcastle for 3 years. He got released by us in 2011. He went to some very low league clubs in Italy: Calcio Vestal, Balearia IM, AC Palazzo. But at 25, he disappeared, completely disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to him. So there you go. Somebody else who,
sounds like he fell out of love with football by the sound of it.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
But that is it, George.
Wow.
That is my team. Dave Besson in goal. Kenny Samson makes the left-hand side of me back three. You've got Claudio Casapa and Ronnie Johnson, or Johnson. We've also got John Barnes in there in the midfield. Pat Hurd, Des Hamilton, Fabrice Pancrat, Andreas Anderson, and Ian Rush, and Emmanuel Riviere make me front three. And on the bench, Super Hooper, Amdi Faye, and Fabio S Blera. So, my manager, George.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
This
I think
was
that's the
this
one
was
that
hard.
everybody will struggle with. Yes. Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard because we've had some stinkers. And I will say that I was torn between Sam Allardyce and this person. So I haven't picked Sam Allardyce. The reason is that I've never walked out of a game early at Newcastle. Never walked out of a football match early. And I was at a match that Sam Allardyce was manager. It was Blackburn away. I think we were 3-0 down in the first half. And I went downstairs and I just drank. And I never went back for the second half. And I've never done that. Never done that. I'll stay and support the team through thick and thin. And yeah, but I looked through Sam's managerial record at Newcastle. And despite the fact that the football was bloody awful, it wasn't as bad statistically as this guy. And this guy is got to be my manager. The new Jamaican manager.
Yeah.
The Wally with the Brolly. Steve McLaren.
Another one that came close for me. Yeah.
He came in, he pleaded with patience, pleaded the Newcastle fans for patience. He then proceeded to lose the first 8 games, not win a game in 8 in the Premier League. So straight away, everyone's on his back. And we signed some good players, which probably means that he had nothing to do with it. We signed Wijnaldum. We signed Mitrovic, who was never my favourite player, but look, not a bad signing when you compare some of the forwards I've got playing on my team. He signed John Joe Shelby, who we all know the faults that John Joe Shelby had, but on his day was a good player. And he signed Andros Townsend. So when you mention those 4 players, you think, wow, not a bad team. But this guy just couldn't get a tune out of them. And he never recovered from that 8-game winless start. And he was sacked in the March. He was literally there a year. 6 wins in 28 league games. And as he left Newcastle in 19th place in the league. That's why Steve McLaren is the manager of my wisdom.
Yeah. Nicely earned, Steve McLaren, because that really was awful stuff. No doubt about it. Yeah. And again, somebody I looked at, obviously, but just my history went a bit further back and could find somebody worse.
Exactly. Well, George, thank you for accompanying me on the journey, mate.
Well,
thanks
great. My pleasure, Steve. It's always good to talk football with you, and I'm sure people will enjoy this as much as anything. Good to be with you, Steve. Good to be with you.
Thanks, George. Take care, mate. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today.